Peace to the family. It's Brother Polight, and I'm here to talk to you today about the coronavirus, the mythos, and its actualities. I actually had a chance today to be in the crib and work something out. That was entirely too early. Please bring it back. You see, let's get it right. I'm live. Let's get it right. I'm live. This is reality TV. Everything got to be done right. Well, it's not reality TV because they mess up quite often. I need everything to be done right the first time around. I'm doing this live for a number of reasons. One is because the only way my videos can be shared on Facebook is on account to the fact that I have to go live. If I do regular publishings, even if it's a picture of my daughter and me hugging her, they're going to say it violates Facebook regulations or something like that. So they got me censored. All right, so I have to do this live. Anything I upload on Facebook, in order for you to be able to share it, I have to do it like this. That's it. So let's go to the coronavirus. You know what I'm saying? How much people we got in there now?
505.
505.
And it's
damn. I was gonna actually turn it off and do it again, but I can't do that to half a thousand people. All right, let's go. Coronavirus, mythos, and actuality. Let's go for it. We need to discuss this. I have a lot to say. I have to go in the back and talk to my daughter about her timing. Let's go to the next slide, please. Come on. She laughing. All right. I need to get my clicker. The human clicker ain't working. See, this is what this whole thing is about, is replacing human beings with technology. Right? So coronavirus is nothing new. The coronavirus is nothing new. I want you to take a look at this Lysol can. This Lysol can been around for as long as the damn virus has been around, all right? So this Lysol can is protecting you from human coronavirus. This Lysol has been around before I was alive. Dettol, here's another one. And it's protecting us from coronavirus. So this tells us that the coronavirus been in existence. Absolute facts. This is a new strain. Has this new strain got so out of control that it creates not an outbreak, not an epidemic, but now a pandemic? I beg to differ. Not because I'm a conspiracy theorist, not because I don't really trust anything that come out the gate from certain entities and major media outlets, but I accepted it for what it was, and that's why I didn't do no presentations. And people was like, yo, talk about the coronavirus, talk about the coronavirus. I sat here and I wanted to understand what's going on. I wanted to know who the target audience is. They wasn't identifying who the target audience is. Why that? What ethnicities are subject to it more? Because most times than less, when there's some kind of epidemic or pandemic, when the AIDS came out, they was like, yo, you know, that shit came out like some mics, some new Jordans. When AIDS came out, they was like, yo, you know, African Americans. Then they like, yo, homosexuals. They normally say who's the target when these diseases, when these viruses come out. They've been kind of on the hush-hush. But what we do know is no one can fly to Europe right now, but you can fly to Africa. I'll say it again. No one can fly to Europe right now. There's a ban on going to Europe, but there's not a ban on going to Africa. It just makes me think, things that make you go, So first and foremost, Lysol protects you from the human coronavirus, and Lysol been around. I'm not suggesting that people start spraying themselves with Lysol. That's not what I'm saying. I just want you to keep in mind that this has been here. Let's go to the next slide. Antibiotics. I am appalled that people that consider themselves medical practitioners, professionals, or are credentialed in the medical field would even suggest to you to get antibiotics. That's when I know there's a conspiracy here, because the suffix biotics in itself alludes to what? Biotic, adjective, of, related to, or resulting from living things. I'm on a time constraint. So just keep in mind, you can always play it back if I'm talking real fast. The suffix biotics deals with living things. Viruses are neither dead or alive, people. Biotics deals with killing off. Antibiotics deal with killing off both good bacteria and bad bacteria. That's what antibiotics deal with. And that's a bad thing. You know what antibiotics are? We know some criminals are hanging out somewhere in the city, and because we don't know where all the criminals are in the city, but we got to get rid of these criminals because they pose a great and an imminent threat, let's just bomb the whole city. Let's just terrorize those. Let's just make the whole city blow up. That's what antibiotics do. It's not really rationale. It's not making a distinction. It doesn't discriminate. It eliminates everything in the flora. And because of the type of living style you have, lifestyle you have, the type of dietary regimen you have, you're going to breed colonies of bad bacteria anyway, because most of you consume refined sugar, white flour, white salt, white potato, and all these other ingredients that breed colonies of bad bacteria. The reason why this is important, people, because you're going to lower your immunity while you're afraid of getting this virus. You're over here wearing different masks, not knowing that a virus is 0.7 microns huge, 0.7 microns large, and the holes in the mask that you're wearing to protect you from a virus that you can contract from a handshake is larger than 0.7 microns. So that means that the virus can seep into the mask that you're breathing in. And you just kept an enclosed space there, so it could be hard for anything to come out. I don't know. It's kind of weird, the information that they've been giving us. But rule number one, do not take antibiotics unless you intend to compound interest on the lowering of your immunity. Don't take antibiotics to kill viruses. Antibiotics are used to kill bacteria. Are you walking with me? Don't use antibiotics. You have your biota, you have your prebiotics, probiotics, all that deals with good and bad bacteria information. It has nothing to do with good and bad viruses information. Don't take antibiotics thinking you will eliminate viruses. Don't listen to that. I don't have to be a medical professional to tell you that. You can look it up and say, damn, that's stupid. And then you got to turn around. Why are they telling us to do this again? Go to the next slide. Antibacterial soaps. Here we go again. And just like I said on the previous video I did, I said, hey, people are taking antibacterial soap, wiping down the arms of the chair, wiping down the chair, wiping down the table. When no one's looking, wiping their ass, hoping they don't get the virus. No way. But here's the problem with that. You're getting rid of good and bad bacteria. You're getting rid of good and bad bacteria. You are compromising the integrity of your gut. And in doing so, you're going to lower your immunity. You're going to spike your glycemic index, your glucose levels. And that's going to take us into another conversation we're about to have. But if you're going to use soap, which you should, I'm not telling you not to clean your hands. You should have been going out your way to clean your hands before the talks of this virus. What was you people doing prior? This is some insane stuff that takes place. Use soaps and toothpaste that do not have triclosan in it. Triclosan kills the good bacteria. Okay, so make sure you get products like toothpaste and hand wash that doesn't have triclosan in it so you can keep the good bacteria. Don't go around your house killing good bacteria. I understand the word bacteria has such a negative connotation that you just say, when you hear bacteria, kill them all. That's what we be thinking. Kill them all when we hear the word bacteria. But the reality is, good bacteria is necessary. Most of the diseases, complexities, idiopathic disorders that human beings have today is because they use antibiotics and then they don't replace the good bacteria that were eliminated in the interim of them attempting to get rid of that virus. That's the problem. Oh, pardon me, get rid of the infectious bacteria. That is the problem. Okay? So, and you can check this out. And you can look it up. And you can ask yourself, why am I going around my house eliminating as much good bacteria as possible? Why am I doing this? Let's go to the next. And here's something that I want you to take a look at. Just get a good look at it, because I'm on a time constraint, but I do want you to have this reference for April 10th, 2018. The source, Komodo University, which talks about intestinal bacteria have attracted recent attention since they were discovered to influence various physiological functions and diseases in humans. Researchers analyzing the influence of changes in intestinal bacteria on sugar and lipid metabolism have found that secondary bile acids produced by intestinal bacteria can influence blood glucose and lipid concentrations as well as parts of their molecular mechanisms. So listen, people, wiping everything down with antibacterial products is not a good idea. Making sure your home is a good bacteria-free environment will only make your body a bad bacteria full environment. I hope you understand what I'm saying. You're going around eliminating the good guys. Let's go to the next one. I'm a nerd, so I get excited about this. I was looking up this lady, Dana Ashley, doing my research, and she referenced this book, Magnetobiology, Underlining Physical Problems, and I felt like this was a very powerful reference. Yeah, it's $213. Who gives a damn? The people who don't have $213. I totally get it. But that's why we here. She made a great reference. She was talking about the 60 megahertz and how it interacts with the oxygen. Okay? She was speaking of frequency and how it impacts oxygen. And first of all, we know that oxygen refers to the atom, O. But when we see O2, we're talking about the molecule. And when we talk about the molecule, we're talking about covalent bonding, where we understand in the innermost valence of the electron, only 2 electrons can be held. But in the outermost valence of electrons, we can have as much as 8 there, right? We can have as much as 8. But what we see here is that we're sharing electrons, though it has 8 electrons in total. And this is what constitutes the oxygen molecular structure. What happens is 60 megahertz causes what? The electrons to spin. So what we're doing is compromising the spin frequency. When we compromise the spin frequency of oxygen, keep in mind it's covalently bonded, then oxygen can't do for us what we want, because now the body can't interpret what the hell that is exactly. And so you have what's called hemoglobin, which is a protein that's responsible for the uptake of oxygen so it can be distributed throughout the body. But those 60 megahertz, in the form of new technology that we ask for, we want our technology to move faster. We want technology to be more efficient. We want faster Wi-Fi. What they don't tell you is how the new technology runs concurrent with the same symptoms that they say that the coronavirus has. That's where we're going with this information. You may say, why is he talking about new technology? Because this technology didn't exist during the other episodes of coronavirus, where we was just using Lysol to get rid of that bitch. I said bit. I might have said a little bit. I didn't mean to. So, what we are saying is the hemoglobin is having problems using oxygen. And that's its job. Okay? So, we're going to go to the next slide to really figure this out. So, technology. The new technology is creating problems in human beings, or anything that needs oxygen for that matter. And the problems that it's causing for human beings, those very problems run concurrent with the problems that we have with the said coronavirus. I hope you're walking with me, because that's where the disconnect could come in with all of this. Because they're deferring our attention to a virus that's been around, though this is a new strain. They're deferring our attention away from the technological issues that are abound and its implications on biological entities such as human beings, and they are making us look at the coronavirus. But we're going to go and we're going to see. So now that we know it's hard for our body to use oxygen the same way, let's go to the next slide. Give me the next slide, baby. So the coronavirus targets, here are the targets, people with respiratory issues, elderly people, and diabetics. We know that elderly, their oxygen levels are on decline as you get older. It happens. Your metabolism slows down, okay? And so we know, oxygen issue. Respiratory issues. Well, you don't get enough oxygen, you got problems breathing. Guess what happens? People normally fall on the floor, right? So when you see the videos of people falling on the floor from coronavirus, that's what they be showing. People being trying to stand up 1 minute, the next thing you know, they just pass out. People with respiratory issues tend to just pass out like that. People that are elderly tend to pass out just like that. And people that are diabetics. If you've been around a diabetic that had a problem at its peak, they tend to just pass out. Well, we also find that oxygen plays an integral role to diabetics. we find out it's called insulin resistance. So the lesser amount of oxygen coming into the body causes more insulin resistance. The more oxygen you give the body, lesser insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone. Hormones are instructions, and the insulin tells the body, more specifically in the case of cells, insulin is a hormone. Hormones are instructions. Insulin gives instructions for the cells to open up their walls to allow blood sugar in the form of glucose to go inside of the cells so it can metabolize, do its work, whatever that work may be consistent of. Well, go back. Well, what happens is, when that doesn't work, the body just produces more insulin. And now you have way too much blood sugar in the body, and glucose is toxic. Glucose is toxic. Let me remind you, glucose is toxic. That's the problem.
Charger.
Huh?
Charger.
How much percentage we on? 5%? Hold on. We can't be doing that. God damn, why this has to happen to me. I feel like I might have to just stop this. Where is that?
Where's your,
Yo, you know what? Hold on, people. I apologize. This damn phone about to die. This is always happening to me. Man, you gotta catch that whole thing. Now I need you to come closer. Plug this thing in. Pardon me, I have on the wrong color belt. I thought I wasn't gonna have to stand up. Do you see it looking like a charger? Mm-hmm. Okay, just check it periodically because that thing is slick sometimes. Okay, hold on. Let me make sure we're still in the building. Okay. Okay. Woo! Okay, so coronavirus targets what? People with respiratory issues, elderly people, and diabetics. Let's go to the next slide so I can just get right into that next point I was making. Here's an article you can look up. It's Oxygen Key to Insulin Resistance. You can type it in the same way. You're going to be able to look at the case study right there. Boom. You could click that and the PDF will come up. Mountains Oxygen Insulin Resistance. But what I'll do in short is read this. Low oxygen levels at Mount Everest. What they did was take people that had diabetes and they brought them to high altitudes where the air was thinner. And what they found out was there was more insulin resistance when they took diabetics to higher altitudes where there was less oxygen available. When they brought them to areas where there was more oxygen, they realized was less insulin resistance. So here we find another connection with oxygen. I'm doing this to corroborate the testimony about the 60 megahertz new technology and how it prevents hemoglobin, the protein that's responsible for the uptake of oxygen to be distributed through the human body. And why the symptoms that run consistent with that phenomena are one and the same as the symptoms that they have deferred our attention to in terms of the coronavirus. I hope we really walk with me. The people that have respiratory issues, diabetics, and the elderly. These are the main targets of the coronavirus. And these also they both have symptoms that run concurrent. Okay, when we're talking about the 60 megahertz impact on biological life, more especially in the case of human beings, and we're talking about the said coronavirus. Okay, this is a depopulation tactic that's being employed, but we're going to go further. Go to the next one. Okay, iron metabolism. This is very important. And let me say this. If you want to get rid of a virus, if you want to be safe during flu season, because that's all this is. And I also want you to remember that over 100,000 people die every year during flu season, which we're around. Okay? Flu season meaning viruses. Over 100,000 people in America die around flu season every year in America. I don't think we hit 10 people yet. And the people that died have been the people that consist of those categories we was talking about. All right? Keep these things in mind. And I'm not saying this to say, hey, you know, don't protect yourself from the virus. You should protect yourself from viruses in general that give you cold symptoms. Okay? So if you want to protect yourself, you get L-ascorbic acid or vitamin C. But don't just get a bunch of vitamin C pills and stop popping them like Molly and expecting things to happen. No, you also will need magnesium because magnesium is necessary so it can absorb the vitamin C. But if you're going to do that, you're going to need vitamin D. And not just any vitamin D. You need vitamin D2 to accompany the magnesium. But you'll need vitamin D3 as far as iron is concerned, because iron is very different. And vitamin D3 is a cofactor of iron, which means one hand washes the other. They need each other. It's very important. So we're going to go into hepcidin. Now, hepcidin is a regulator of iron metabolism. Hepcidin inhibits iron transport by binding to the iron export and channel the ferroportin, which is located on the basolateral surface of gut, enterocytes, and the plasma membrane of reticuloendothelial cells, macrophages. Got it right on the first damn try. We will not read this shit again. Okay? We will not. Take one, we got it, that's it. So, what we're going to do is read around that word and deal with everything else. Now, you stop. So, I want you to realize gut enterocytes. What are enterocytes? Well, you have enteroendocrine cells that exist in the synapse, which means a bridge that connect your gut to your brain. Let's do that first and foremost. So, we see the connection between the gut and the brain. The gut is actually the brain itself. The brain is actually the interpreter. It gets too much credit. Okay, the brain speaks the language of all the different cells of the body, the heart cells, the brain cells, the cells, and everything like that, and then it interprets what's needed, so long as the neurotransmission is not compromised, and you need oxygen for that. So when we tell you don't take all those antibacterial soaps and don't take all those antibiotics, and because you're going to eliminate the good bacteria that exists in your gut, and now somehow iron has something to do with it. And hepcidin, they just found out about this about 30 years ago. In the 1990s, they just found out about hepcidin. Prior to that, and still today, ignorantly, you still got doctors that say, hey, you got low iron levels, take 3 sets of iron pills every damn day. And the more iron pills you take, the more hepcidin levels you raise, the more your hepcidin levels raise, the less iron can be absorbed. When hepcidin goes up, iron absorption goes down. Then you have this phenomenon called anemia. Not sickle cell anemia, anemia. And anemia is actually being imposed on black people secretly because it can be rectified. Number one, stop making people take iron pills. Like iron is a mineral similar to all those other minerals. It's very different, and you need the cofactor D3 for the iron. I didn't say D2, but you need to first know D2 and D3. D2 comes from plants and D3 comes from animals. But when we say it comes from animals, we mean from sun exposure. Sun has to be a part of your diet. Facts, when you go to work, it's dark, and when you go off a lunch break, you probably work downtown with a skyscraper scraping the sky, blocking the sun. You don't get enough sun. Then when you get off of work, there's no sunlight. And then when you do hang out, it's nighttime, and you only get in the moon's light, which is a luminescent body, not of itself, but gets its light from the sun. You become a lunatic. That's another conversation for another time. We got to get into this because hepcidin is made from the liver. Whoa. Hepcidin is made from the liver. So, let's go to the next slide. Oh, I forgot this was the abbreviated version because I was doing the Instagram thing. That has to be less than 10 minutes. Okay, people. BBC News updated map. We cannot fly to Europe no more, but we still can fly to Africa. Very interesting to me. Very, very, very interesting. Because someone's always more of a target than others, but they've been keeping these people who are targets very anonymous lately. Unless they're a superstar now, because Tom Hanks got it. Okay? And Rudy Gobert got it. These are all white folks, non-black folks. And so it gets interesting because when you look throughout Africa, you got Algeria here, you got Egypt here, you got Nigeria there, Cameroon there, we got the Congo here, we got South Africa there, and it's very mild. Okay, we get a little bit more where it escalates here in Algeria and in Egypt, but the reality is these happen to also be the countries that China has its biggest hand in. They actually have larger Chinese populace there. The point in case is, for Africa to be so filled with destitution, pestilence, and be behind the medical industry, most of the damn continent isn't even impacted. But you look over here at America, and you definitely look over here at China, and they got the whole Europe over here. You look at Africa and you go, God damn, most of Africa isn't even impacted. And then when you consider the parts of Africa that's impacted, China's been trying to purchase Africa for some time now. They got their hands thick into those countries that I just labeled. Coincidence? No coincidence. Now I have to take you on another journey. So, the way this journey works is that we gotta know that, which one should I do? White people have larger red blood cells. Black people have smaller red blood cells. White people have more hemoglobin. Black people have less hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the protein that's responsible for the uptake of oxygen so it can be distributed throughout the body. If you subject to technology that constitutes 60 megahertz, it compromises the spin frequency of the covalent bond that we know as oxygen in its molecular form. And what that in turn does is make it hard for our body to make rationale out of how to use the oxygen. I know you're like, what does all this have to do with coronavirus? Close that for me? Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm calling coronavirus a misnomer for 60 megahertz technology. That's what I'm doing. And it gets deeper than this, but first, it's so much layers of information that we got to go through. So let's do it, and let's do it real good. Let me check something out. Good? Okay. Let's check this out. Okay, so let me start again. White people have larger red blood cells and more hemoglobin. Black people have smaller red blood cells and lesser hemoglobin. It is actually easier for white people to get vitamin D3. Let's stop saying vitamin D, just like there's a B complex. There's technically a D complex. There's vitamin D2 and D3. D2 you get from plants, going to help you absorb magnesium, which the magnesium is then going to help you absorb what? Calcium. Calcium is L-ascorbic acid, which has been proven in the cases of bacterial and viral infections. It lowers the duration of the impact of those viruses, and most instances eliminates the bacterial infection or the viral infection. See, there's a lot of information that we got to cover because it's not common. We don't get taught this in school, and we only start considering these things when we feel our life is at stake. And like I said, people doing weird things like destroying all the good bacteria in their house because they don't want to get coronavirus. Where in turn, they're now lowering their immunity by doing so because now your gut doesn't have much to gain from that kind of activity. But we go again. White people have white people have more hemoglobin and they have more red blood cells. They have larger red blood cells. Black people have lesser red blood cells, smaller red blood cells, and they have less hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein responsible for the uptake of oxygen so it can be distributed throughout the body. Now that we got that resolved, we got to go over to vitamin D3. it's easier for white people to access vitamin D3 in a lesser period of time. The problem is they can't get as much as they would like because the sun will burn them, but they get it quicker than us. Our body protects us from the harmful aspects of the sun, so it takes us a longer period of time to synthesize the vitamin D3 that we get, so we have to stay in the sun for longer periods of time. The reason why you can see this kind of opposing thing going on is because one is compensatory. So this means because white people can't stay in the sun longer, their body is conditioned in such a way to be able to take more in a little bit of time, where our body was designed to be on planet Earth. So there's no rush. So we have smaller red blood cells and a lower hemoglobin count because we can stay in the sun long enough to avoid a lot of the plagues that don't demand as much as oxygen for the body, because oxygen is a resourceful tool that is also poisonous. That's why you have antioxidants, just like glucose is poisonous. Yes, glucose is poisonous. So what happens? We got to do this. And I'm going to come right back and we're going to get to coronavirus and to the different races and see how everybody's being impacted. Well, adipose is a fat. Let's remember that. I don't want to have to keep saying adipose and people get distracted. So just think fat when I say adipose. Okay, so now what we got to understand is the liver and the pancreas got to constantly communicate. Blood sugar is called glucose. Glucose in the bloodstream is toxic unless it's used specifically for what it needs to be used for. It is toxic. It's like leaving the guns around the children in the household. Eventually something bad is going to happen. If the glucose stays suspended, is the battery still dying? If the glucose stays suspended, I'm just talking to the guys. If it stays suspended in the bloodstream, the nerves get destroyed in the body. And this is why people lose their sense of feeling when they're diabetic. You walking with me? So now what happens is your body says we got to regulate the amount of blood sugar that comes in and out and be able to call on it or summons it when we need it. So hormones are instructions. So your liver gives instructions in the form of the hormone glucagon that attaches itself to receptors that's in the liver, so those cells can now say take the excess amount of glucose and store it inside a fat called glycogen. Well, pardon me. The glucagons give instructions when it attaches itself to the liver receptors of the cell and then say, hey, we need more glucose so it can be distributed through. Glycogen is the blood sugar that's stored inside a fat to protect you from the toxicity of the blood sugar. So let's do it again. The liver, let's do it again, pardon me. The pancreas has a hormone called glucagon that it sends to the liver to tell the liver it's okay to give us more blood sugar. The liver stores the blood sugar inside a fat called glycogen. When the glucagons attach itself to receptors that come from the liver, executed by the pancreas, the liver will then say, okay, let's release these into the bloodstream. The insulin now comes in from the pancreas and says, well, cells get ready to open up your walls to allow the blood sugar that's now being distributed, thanks to the homies called the glucagons that came from the pancreas, conveyed the message to the liver to access the glycogen, which is the fat that stores the blood sugar as a reserve, because we know the blood sugar is toxic. Now that everybody has made it clear we need more blood sugar, release the glycogen, release the insulin, release the blood sugar that's inside of the glycogen. The insulin now is produced and gives the instructions, because insulin is a hormone. It gives the instructions for the cells to open up their walls, allow the blood sugar to go in so it can be metabolized. That's what's going on. Okay? So pancreas communicates to liver. Liver distributes blood sugar in the stream. Pancreas says, hey, insulin, do your job. Insulin gives instructions, give it to us in the cells. Why is all of this even important in the first place? So now we got to go into what's called sickle cell anemia, which is an adaptive disorder. Sickle cell anemia was black people's cure. Now we get to the real stuff. The cure for sickle cell anemia was what? The ability for black people to take something like a parasite called malaria that they wasn't familiarized with in Africa, but on account of different climatical conditions. You don't catch a hot in Africa, you catch a cold in America. So we caught these colds, everyone was dropping like flies, but black people managed to stay alive. Because black people's body has a mechanism that says we can deprive ourselves of X amount of oxygen and still thrive. So the cells became crescent in shape. So in order to kill the parasite, but keep us alive, our body knew to take away 40% or a little more of the oxygen that constitutes the red blood cell, because the parasites couldn't live having that little amount of oxygen per cell. And it sure gave us some symptoms, but it kept us alive. So sickle cell anemia is an adaptive disorder. It is the cure that black people's body created in light of them being subject to malaria. Everybody else was dying. It just died?
Oh, yeah, but it's going to. We're
going to keep it going. Why is this important? Think about everything I've been teaching this whole time. About the inability to access oxygen. Who's it going to affect more? It's going to affect all the other races first, before it impacts you. I'm going to say it again. If this whole thing is about who can survive with lesser oxygen for longer periods of time, it's going to be us, because sickle cell anemia is an attestation of this. But now we got to get back into iron synthesis. You need B12 in order to actually properly synthesize iron. That's one of the tricks. That's one of the tricks. Okay? This phone's about to die, man. But the point in case is, everybody's about to die, but we'll be the last ones dead. Let me just do that, because I'm going to have to do part 2 to this, because I got some weird things going on with technology that when I got to teach, my charger is still allowing the phone to die, but die slower. That's what's going on. I don't go through this crap. When I'm just chilling, when I'm on the phone, talking about sports, it's only when I gotta teach this kind of confusion takes place. And when I say it dies quicker, it dies quicker. But that's aside from the point. Let's go back. So the coronavirus, yes, keep your hands clean. You should have been doing that. Raise your levels of vitamin C by eating foods that have vitamin C in it. That'll make more sense. But if you choose to take some supplements and increase your vitamin C, you have to make sure you take magnesium, and you have to make sure you get enough sunlight or vitamin D2 from plants. But as far as being able to absorb iron, you're going to need vitamin D3 and you're going to need B12. Those are very important. You need to get out there and get you some sunlight. I'm going to finish this up. This is just part 1. I figured since it's on Facebook, I'd be able to do the whole thing, but I don't want to have my wisdom cut off at the crucial part. But at least y'all get the gist of what I'm saying. It's about oxygen deprivation. At least when you review it, you can see where this story is going to and why we're the least impacted or affected. I'm telling you that coronavirus is a misnomer for something that is bigger that is taking place, and that is the type of technology that we are using. The type of technology that we are using is running concurrent with the coronavirus. And so instead of putting the blame on the technology, they got us looking at the virus. And that's why we see the numbers are so low everywhere, but they're shutting down whole countries because of 5 or 6 things. Don't you know last year, 2019, we had a measles epidemic? It goes from outbreak to epidemic to pandemic. We was on the brink of a pandemic, and the numbers weren't remotely close to these. These numbers are minuscule compared to how much people was having measles. It was a measles outbreak that turned into an epidemic. Ain't nobody said nothing about it. Nobody was shutting down countries or anything. But there's, 8 people in Florida got it. We ain't flying to Europe no more, fam. But in part 2, we're going to go further so we can show you the correlation between the coronavirus and this technological phenomena, so you can see where the mishap is taking place. Because I got some slides that I actually got to read the documentation.